Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's a special episode where we'll take you inside a recent meeting of the RSPA Emerging Technologies Advisory Group. We had a featured guest for that meeting. It was technology entrepreneur, futurist, author, and speaker Byron Reese talking about AI's impact on our world and the retail IT channel in particular. But before we get to that, we want to make sure we thank these channel-focused companies who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our gold sponsors are Blue Star, CoCard, Epson, Global Payments, Order Counter, and ScanSource. Also, I want to make sure we remind you to save the date for Retail Now 2026, the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event. This year's event is set for July 26th through 28th at the new Caesars Forum Conference Center in Las Vegas. For more information, visit gorspa.org/Retail Now. Retail Now is where the industry meets. All right, I think you're really going to enjoy this community conversation with futurist Byron Reese about AI and more. Thanks for listening. All right, well, Ayan, if you can keep letting folks in, we will get rocking and rolling. Welcome, everybody, to the January 27th, 2026 edition of the Emerging Technologies Advisory Group. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. A couple updates on RSPA business before we get rocking and rolling. Usually, this would be the point where we would say, hey, if you want to go to Inspire, this is your last chance, but actually it is sold out. We have reached and actually surpassed our capacity of 300 for this event. That shatters the all-time record by a little over 60. Again, you can follow along online with everything, but make sure next year when we are opening up registrations that you jump on board, because we have a few folks that are on the waiting list. So if you still are interested in attending, make a last-minute trip to Hawaii, feel free to reach out to membership@gorspa.org. We will put you on the waiting list, but someone's going to have to cancel before you jump on board. So again, big thanks to the community for making Inspire the biggest, and it's on track to be the best that we're going to have. Again, this is the Emerging Technologies Advisory Group. Day 2 is going to focus on AI. We have 4 RSPA members who are AI inventors, AI entrepreneurs, and they're going to be running a workshop there, so it should be great. I also want to remind everybody about RSPA White Glove Service. This is a free service that we offer to all of our members. You see the long list of member benefits on the left. We have a growing list of member companies, over 750 that we have. And so the member services team of Peggy, Nicole, and Heather are happy to help you out. Heather just joined us 3 weeks ago as of yesterday. And then you will not see Nicole on the call today because Nicole and her husband Trip and their little boy Oliver welcomed the second little boy to their family. Ezra James was born yesterday afternoon. So we gave Nicole the day off today. She'll be back tomorrow. No, she's not going to be back for a while as she's raising her growing family there. So congrats to her again. If you want any guidance from the RSPA member services team, email membership@gorspa.org or reach out directly to either Peggy, Nicole, or Heather. All right, so the agenda for today, one thing that we ask everybody, if you want to connect with other folks, drop into the chat right now your LinkedIn profile link, and that way folks can connect with each other. You can even see a little bit of the background of your fellow RSPM members who are on this call today. Also, we will do a quick review of the mission and responsibilities. We're going to give an update on the AI Advisory Group. There was a spinoff from this group. The main featured point of today's call is our group discussion. We have a special guest for the first time ever. Is going to be Byron Reese. And then we'll wrap up talking about content for the RSPA community and then takeaways and the next meeting. All right, a reminder of this group's mission and responsibilities. Again, we guide RSPA members on which emerging technologies and innovative solutions they should learn more about and consider offering to their merchant customers. And again, the group's activities includes this regular meeting, contributing content that it's distributed through various RSPA channels, and then presenting on emerging technologies at the RSPA events. And usually, again, we're on here talking with each other. We have a special outside guest today. But before we get to our guest, we want to give you an update on the AI advisory group. If folks remember, we came out of our board meeting 6 months ago saying there is no dedicated resource for retail IT VARs and software providers about AI. There's just so much information on there, it's hard for them to narrow it down. And so this group tasked us with forming that. So we formed this AI advisory group to help us do that. And so the purpose, again, provide RSPA members with guidance on AI application, both for internal efficiency and also for merchant facing, for monetization. We recruited about 40 individuals from the member community, and our goal was to have the AI Resource Hub live by January 23rd. And with it being January 27th now, this is usually where I should give the excuse and go, you know, it fell a little bit behind and people got busy and had a lot of things to do. But I am thrilled to report, if you go to gorspa.org, and you can see the link on here, /AI-resource-hub, and Chris Arnold or Ayana, if you could please drop into the chat that link, that would be tremendous. That resource hub is live. So version 1 has come out live, and we'll be continuing to update that. Those groups are going to be meeting later in Feb, early in March to work on version 2. And we will officially unveil it and announce it at the day 2 that I mentioned, the AI workshop at RSPA Inspires. So thanks again. I know we have a lot of folks on this call who contributed to that. Very much a community effort. Congrats and thank you to everybody for putting together a great resource for that group. So that link that we just shared, that's for your eyes only. Please don't, I mean, you can share it internally, but don't share it like on social media or anything like that, so we can have the big coming out on AI Day at Inspire. Any questions before we get going? All righty. Then I am thrilled to mention our featured guest, as I mentioned, Byron Reese. He's a tech entrepreneur, futurist, author, and speaker who some of us saw keynote ScanSource's 2025 Partner First Conference in September in Arlington. Byron has over 25 years experience as a successful tech entrepreneur, and his presentations focus on the transformative effect of technology on the workplace and society at large. Byron has spoken on the future of AI, the future of work, the future of banking, the future of finance, and many more subjects. He holds numerous patents and has started and sold multiple companies, including 2 NASDAQ IPOs. He's been featured in the Washington Post, New York Times, San Francisco Chronicle, Wired, Entrepreneur, Bloomberg Businessweek, USA Today, NPR, and now the RSPA Emerging Technologies Advisory Group. I was thrilled that I got to see Byron speak at the ScanSource event, and that's a big reason why he's here today. Very impressed with his presentation. Byron, welcome to the Emerging Technologies Advisory Group. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so the format today, I'm going to ask Byron a few questions, and then we will open it up to the group for anybody to weigh in with their comments and questions and pick Byron's brain. We've got him for the full hour here, so really looking forward to it. So Byron, we want to get your take right away on AI, right? That we just came back from the National Retail Federation, NRF Big Show. AI was all over the place in every booth and like every education session. Now, you believe that AI will eliminate many jobs, but you also believe that it's a highly beneficial productivity tool that's going to lead to many new creations, new jobs, and new companies that we can't even imagine right now. Can you talk a little bit more about what you predict AI's impact is going to be?
I'd be happy to. It's probably the #1 question I get when I talk to people. And it would be a mistake to say I think it's going to eliminate a lot of jobs because,
okay.
Well, I guess let me start at the beginning. We've had transformative technologies really hit the world in a dramatic way several times in history. You think of the assembly line, which completely changed how we made things. And that almost overnight changed how we manufactured things. You think of the replacement of animal power with steam power. That took place over about 20 years. And it all happened because if you were still using draft animals when other people had steam engines, you were just gone. So in 20 years, we had all of this disruption and all of these teamsters and all these people who took care of those animals, all of that. We electrified industry in 7 years. And you can understand why. If electricity came out and it all of a sudden was available and you didn't, you went out of business. And so everybody rushed and electrified everything. And all the steam engines vanished. So those are just 3 technologies that came along that really were disruptive in a profound way. Now, if I were to graph the unemployment line over the last 100 years in this country and ask you to find those things, you wouldn't find them. There's not even a blip. There's not even a tiny, tiny bit of unemployment. So you say, well, why is that? How could that possibly be? I've spent an enormous amount of time and research on the question of how jobs are created and how they're destroyed. And I think the half-life of a job is about 50 years. Put another way, I think every 50 years we lose half of all the jobs. I think that's been going on for 300 years in this country. Now, you would want to ask yourself, does that even pass a basic sniff test? Would you accept that here, for round numbers, it's 2025, 50 years ago, 1975? Would you accept that maybe half of the jobs have vanished since 1975? You can start thinking of them all. And then you say, well, what about between 1925 and 1975? And the answer is, yeah, we lost a lot of farm jobs in that period. You think 1875 to 1925, and again and again and again. And it seems to be pretty constant. If anything, it's slowed down, but I'll come to that in a moment. Now, how is it, if you graph unemployment, this country has maintained full employment for 250 years. I mean, with a couple of, the Great Depression or some spike of the business cycle. But by and large, we've maintained full employment throughout all of work, all of our history, and we've maintained rising wages through that period. And so you would have to ask yourself a simple question, which is, how is it that in an economy where half of the jobs are destroyed every 50 years, do we keep everybody employed and have higher wages? And it has to do with the nature of technology and what technology does. What technology is, in the end, are things that amplify human ability. They're things that make people able to do more. They increase human productivity. Now, there are very few absolute statements in this world that are true, but I'm going to make one. Increasing worker productivity is always good for workers, always. And if you don't believe that, imagine passing a law that did the opposite. Let's say you passed a law that required everyone to work with one arm tied behind their back. Okay, everybody's got to work with one arm tied behind their back. What did you just do to jobs? You created a whole lot of jobs because you need 2 people to do anything that one person used to be able to do. But those jobs won't pay anything because you just destroyed everybody's productivity. So you need to think of perhaps of technology as the antithesis of that. It is essentially giving people another arm, or in the case of AI, giving people another brain. Making people more productive never is bad for workers. It never is. Now, don't get me wrong. Workers have often been worried about labor-saving technology. The history is full of that. In the 1820s, there were these things called the thresher riots, where the automatic thresher was going to put people out of business. When they automated the loom, people destroyed them. They burned down the house of the guy that invented the sewing machine. So labor has always been worried about it. But the simple fact of the matter is that technology itself you can't increase people's productivity and have everybody be worse off. Why is it that it appears to be that way? Why is it that there's so much worry about it? I used to blame the media. That's always, that's a popular pastime. I don't anymore. I don't actually think that's it at all. I'll tell you what I really think it is. I remember 1995, the internet. I was there at the beginning, and I remember vividly what they said it was going to do to jobs. People said the following. They said, all the travel agents are going to go out of business. And all the stockbrokers are going to go out of business because people will just trade their own stocks online. And they said the newspapers are going to go out of business because people will get their news online. And the yellow pages are going to go out of business because people will just look that information up. And the postal system will suffer because people will send email. And you know what? They were right. They were right about every single thing. But what nobody in 1995 said was, there'll be eBay and Etsy and Airbnb and Uber and Spotify and YouTube and a million other companies that created trillions of dollars worth of wealth. And so that's the problem with it. It's trivially easy to see what technology will destroy, but none of us have the imagination to understand what it's going to enable. But what you can always say is increasing human productivity is good for humans. The greatest shortage we have right now, the greatest shortage we have are people. The amount of jobs we have that we don't, and it's going to get worse. Technology creates all these new opportunities, and we're simply not going to have the people to do them. Now, I have a very deep belief. It's something very personal to me, and it is the following statement. Any job that can be done by a machine, forget whether you have the machine, any job that can be done by a machine, if you ask a person to do that job, there's a word for that, and that word is dehumanizing. Dehumanizing. What you're saying to that person is you're saying, look, a machine could do this job, but I don't have the machine. So what I need you to do is just be a machine I don't own. I don't need you to be creative. I don't need you to be empathetic, anything, because we already said a machine can do the job. And so when you take people and you make them do things machines can do, you are taking their humanity. And so the sooner we get rid of all of that, the better it is for everyone. Now, some people are worried. They say, look, all of that's well and good, but how does the real world work? Technology creates all these awesome new jobs, high pay, high skill, like a geneticist. But the jobs it's destroying are low wage, low skill jobs, like the order taker at a fast food place. And people say, do you really think that order taker has the skills to be a geneticist? In other words, can you teach coal miners how to write code? And that is a simplistic way of thinking of it that ignores what really happens. If the new job is a geneticist, well, a biologist is going to get that, maybe a college biology professor. But then, oops, there's an opening at the college. So they backfill it with the high school biology teacher. Now there's a backfill at the high school. So they hire that substitute teacher on full time. And everybody moves up a notch. The question isn't, can that person do that job at the top? The question is, can everybody in this country do a job a little harder than the job they do today? And I think the answer to that is yes. And that is 300 years of economic history of this country. For 300 years, technology's created new jobs at the top, destroyed ones at the bottom, and we've all ridden that up with full employment and rising wages. And that isn't going to change. If anything, the last thing I'll say is I do think, unfortunately, it's slowing down. Everybody used to get all worried about like the truckers. We're going to automate trucking, and then that's going to be the tipping point, and then the cafes are all going to close, and then the society will fall. And it's always one thing like that or another. And they've been saying this for years. It's always 5 years out that this is going to happen. And I used to host the #1 AI podcast. And I had all these people whose names come on and say, in 5 years, we're going to have massive unemployment. And this was over 5 years ago. And you see, we're still in the boat where we don't. Everywhere I go, there's a shortage of people. And that's going to continue, without a doubt. If I had to put a confidence on that, I would put it very high.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. If I can pull on one thread that you brought up and tie it to our industry. So, we started off this call talking about the RSPA Inspire Winter Leadership Conference. The first one I attended was 20 years ago. And the big theme there was the internet is coming and it's going to put everybody in this industry out of business because everyone will just be able to buy their cash registers, their point of sale equipment, everything related on the internet. Well, that hasn't come true. In fact, our association, our community has grown exponentially because of technology that people would buy online. You can still buy a cash register online, but the technology's gotten so much more advanced, they still need the trusted advisor, which is what a lot of our members are. I just want to get your take on that. Is it kind of like, well, of course, like how could it be otherwise? But it just, as you were talking about that, I guess maybe I'm being a little retrospective because it was, exactly 20 years ago that we had that conference. What's your take on that? And I guess the kind of the future of technology professionals and their need, that merchants will have for them. What are your thoughts? What's your reaction?
The nail gun, when they made the nail gun, chunk, 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 that didn't lessen the need of carpenters. You actually didn't lay carpenters off because you had a nail gun. What you did is you changed the economics of building things and you lowered the cost. And so people ended up hiring more. You may know the famous example of the ATM machine. Like In 1979, this thing comes out. And if you were a bank teller and they said, what does ATM stand for? You said, what does ATM stand for? And they said, automatic teller machine. And you're like, that doesn't sound good for me. And yet there's more bank tellers today than there were then, because that lowered the cost of opening bank branches. And so there's vastly more bank branches now, each of which needs tellers. Google Translate can translate a document as well as a human. What do you think that's going to do to the need for human translators? According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, it's going to go up 30% in the next 10 years. Why would that be if the machine's doing it? Well, because the minute you lower the transactional cost of translation to zero, people are like, I ought to open up an office in Germany, localize my product to Germany. But then guess what? There's phone calls that have to be made. There's a contract that has to be negotiated. There's localization of the product in that market. When we got Rocket Lawyer, the number of lawyers didn't go down. The lawyers came in and customized those things. When we get QuickBooks, the number of accountants didn't go down. When we get TurboTax, the number of tax accountants didn't go down. Again and again and again, this is what happens. When you lower the mechanical part of it to zero, demand surges and you need more of the professionals, the people like you. There's not a bank teller alive that pines away for the good old days when people would stand in line and give them a check for $60 and they would hand them 320s. Because that's what a machine can do, and it's beneath the dignity of a human. So I would say a thought experiment is, what if all the jobs that machines can do are done by machines? What is it that only people can do? And that is a lot of things. But many of them have to do with relationships, have to do with compassion, have to do with relating to people. I mean, there's tons of things. But one of them that I think applies in this case is, in a world of ever more choices, which is what our world is, the most valuable thing you can be is a trusted guide. Because the more choices there are, the more people have to navigate that, and the less it's obvious to them what to do, and the more they need somebody to help them. And so being a trusted guide is something that people don't want to defer that to a machine. Nobody wants to go into a doctor's office and get a test and then Monday morning get a postcard in the mail that says, you have cancer. Show up at... I mean, we're humans, and humans interact with other human beings, and that's what's wonderful, is we're going to eliminate the jobs that only machines can do and make people do things only people can do.
Yeah, and you mentioned the trusted guide, going back to that point of sale analogy, you can get any point of sale equipment on the internet now, but what's a merchant going to do? Choose from 200? Like, someone needs to help them. Another quote. So the quote that you just said, you mentioned it, you said at the ScanSource conference. Another one that you said that I wanted you to expand upon for our group here. You said, things are about to go crazy and really take off. It took all of human history to make your laptop, and in 2 years, there will be a laptop with double the capability. But even with all the technology advancements, the jobs of tomorrow will be, and you tied into this earlier, relationship-based, because people don't want to build a relationship with a machine. So can you talk about the advancements that you're seeing, about that doubling of the technology? And then, again, hearing more about the relationship-based. And that almost seems like we need, as a community, we need to be technological experts, and we also need to be relationship experts. You can't just be one or the other. I guess, can you expand upon what you said at ScanSource and the principle there?
Did I start that story with the Big Bang? Does that ring a bell?
I don't think so. I don't think.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back in time. I mean, I want to drive this point home if we have the time. It's worth hearing. Okay. This story begins, like all stories do, at the Big Bang. And what happened was, 4 billion, 5 billion, anyway, a bunch of stuff happened. And then Earth was formed. And then very shortly after Earth was formed, it cooled and life formed on Earth. And it only happened once, and we know that. It's very interesting how. But the simple thing is that all life on Earth is DNA-based life. And DNA is a data storage device. That's all it is. It's not alive. Your DNA contains about 600 megabytes of data, and that data is how to build and operate you. And that was the only place data was stored anywhere in the universe that we know of. And the only way it ever changed was through mutation, random mutation. And so nothing changed for 2.5 billion years because there was this one data source and it didn't really ever change. And then about 400 million years ago, there was something called the Cambrian explosion. And that is when brains emerged. And when you had brains, you had a second place to store data. And they were fantastic because you could read and write to them very quickly. And you could write to them through a thing called learning. And so all of a sudden life took off and just took off. And then things, you would think that that's great. 40,000 years ago, we get speech, which is like a protocol for exchanging information, data with each other. And there was still a problem, though, with people. And the problem was that people died. So you would spend your whole life learning something, and then you die. Everything you knew went with you. And then the next generation would learn everything, and then they would die. And humanity almost reset every generation with just a little bit remembered. And then about 4,000 years ago, that all changed because we figured out a third place to store data, and that was externalizing it in writing. And writing was expensive, so we didn't save very much, but all of a sudden human knowledge could accumulate. Human knowledge could accumulate. And when it accumulated, human progress went way up. Then Gutenberg comes along, and he says, okay, it's no longer expensive to save everything. You can save all you want. And it's really cheap because of movable type. And so then all of a sudden humanity starts saving everything. But what we did with that is we put it in these buildings called libraries, and we made a little card catalog. You would search, and it was like that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they put the Ark in that warehouse. It's like what you want may be in that warehouse, but you're never going to find it. And all of that knowledge and information gave us the scientific revolution. It gave us everything that we have around us, but it hit this brick wall with libraries, because it didn't matter if you doubled the size of a library, you didn't double anybody's knowledge. Then we learned to digitize it all. And when we learned to digitize it, all of a sudden you could search it. And then we had Google and those kinds of things where every page, every fact you could search for. And then finally, most recently, we have LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT. And they are a profound piece of technology. And the reason they're a profound piece of technology, the like of which my story about them begins with the Big Bang, that's how profound they are in their impact. What they are is they're an attempt to build a single knowledge base of all human thought. Because you see, when you do a search on Google, it still says, I got 30 million pages with your answer. And that's true. That's because all knowledge is scattered to the winds. And there are 30 million different places that have the answer to your question. And Google knows about all of them. But you don't want 30 million answers, you want one answer. So for the first time in human history, we now have a species level memory that learns all of this stuff and accumulates, and you can interact with it and have a conversation with it. Now, against the backdrop of that, our access to information going up exponentially, something else has happened. And that is a mystery. And that is that it started with a man named Gordon Moore noticing that in the little period of time he was looking at, the 1960s, the power of computers doubled every 2 years. And he said, that's really interesting. And he thought it would go on a little while longer. Then other people came along, like Ray Kurzweil, and said, you know what? That's been going on for 100 years. Even when computers were made of different things, they still doubled every 2 years. And then other people came along and said, you know what? All technology seems to behave that way. All technology seems to double on a periodic basis. It may not double every 2 years, maybe every 37 years, maybe every year and a half, but it doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles. And humans are terrible at understanding what that means. And there's a story, an analogy that's used. It's not mine. It is about the invention of the game of chess. And the story goes that in present-day India, and the story goes that the man who invented chess brought it to the ruler. And he said, I have invented chess. And the ruler said, this is really cool. What would you like for a reward? And he said, I am a humble man. He showed him a chessboard, 64 squares. He said, take a single grain of rice and put it on that first square. And then double it on the second one, put 2. Then 4, 8, 16, 32, blah, blah, blah. And I just want the rice on the 64th square. Now, how much rice do you think that is? The point of the story is you're going to guess way too low. So think big. The answer is is more rice than has ever been cultivated in the history of all humanity, ever. All of it. And when the ruler found that out, he had the guy put to death. There's a little life lesson to be had in there. But the bottom line is nobody can understand how big that is. What it means is that it took humanity 3,000 years to go from the abacus to the iPad. And in 20 years, you're going to have something as different from the iPad as it is from the abacus, something you and I can't even imagine. So the bottom line of the story is, if all of the technology around you is doubling on its periodic basis, what it means is that it took all of human history to make, say, your laptop. And in 2 years, it'll be twice as powerful. So we're going to duplicate all that human accomplishment of 40,000 years that got to your laptop, and we're going to double that. And then we're going to double that. And we're going to double that. Because you happen to be born on square 60 and 61 of that chessboard, where when you double all of the technology in this world, just imagine it. It took all of history to make this wondrous world we live in, and it's all about to double. We're going to have all of that again. And then that's going to double, and that's going to double, and that's going to double. I often show, to prove this, to really drive this home, I often show a full-page newspaper circular from 1996. It's a Radio Shack ad. And I drive home that it's 1996 and just soak in what you were doing then and all of that. And the punchline of the story is 10 years after that ad ran, your phone did every single thing in it. So the iPhone came out in 2006. So no more camcorders, no more computers, no more telephones, no more answering machines, no more radios, no more weather channels, no more any of that. And if somebody had told you in 96, they said, hey, in 10 years, you're going to carry a supercomputer in your pocket, and it will be free with a 2-year contract, and little kids are going to have them, street sweepers are going to have them, everybody's going to have them. And there's a little thing called the App Store where there's 4 million more things that it can do, and they're $1 each. You would have said, no, that's not going to happen. But it did in 10 short years. And you don't need me to tell you that our world is changing. 1996 seems like the olden days at this point. Our world is changing radically. So now all of a sudden, you have all technology doubling. It's all about to double everything we have. Against that, you had this consolidation of all human knowledge into a single knowledge base that you can interact with. And finally, we're putting all these sensors on everything that are gathering data about the world to feed that knowledge base. All of a sudden, everything you think, the world is going to change in profound ways that very soon, much sooner than you could ever imagine, because it's doubling. And that shouldn't frighten anybody, because machines are not people. People are not machines. And what people do is no machine can ever do. Think about it. We still read Shakespeare, right? Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes make Romeo and Juliet. And you still go and you still watch those 400-year-old stories. And we live in a world that would have been unrecognizable to those people. And yet we know those people. You know a Lady Macbeth. You know an Iago. And you can still relate to those because fundamentally we haven't changed. It's just all the accoutrement around us is changing. And it's going to be wonderful. I believe in utopia. I do think we're going to build a better world, not because we're any better, but because we learned a trick on how to do more called technology. And you and I just happen to be born on square 61. And by the time we get to 62 or 63, we're going to be able to solve all these problems that have plagued humanity since the beginning. I'm so confident of it. In fact, I would go so far as to say I do not think it can be derailed. It's that inevitable.
Love it. Thank you. Really appreciate you sharing that, Byron. So I'm going to open up to the group now. Who would like to weigh in first? And just unmute yourself and jump right in and ask Byron any question that you want, or if you want to be more orderly and just raise your hand in teams, we can do that as well. So who wants to ask the first question of Byron about what's around the corner?
It's a lot to take in. You know, the number one question I get asked, actually, after the job one, is what can my children do today? Like, what should they study to? My wife and I homeschooled 4 kids, and our kids are going to be alive, hopefully, in the year 2100. And to think, what can you teach somebody today that'll be useful in the year 2100 is a wonderful, wonderful exercise.
Thank you. Who wants to go first? We got a lot of high initiative folks on this call. Who would like to ask Byron a question about anything related to technology, the future, what's around the corner? Nick from Brother.
Yeah, so I mean, as part of this, and I'm thinking back in history, and I don't recall any specific examples, but clearly in today's world, as the acceleration of technologies continuing to outpace regulation, law, governments, obviously they're chasing to catch up to put some boundaries in there to make it safe for humans. Are you seeing any trends or tendencies in that realm as well, in terms of how governments have learned to grapple with this acceleration?
Well, when ChatGPT first came out, there were all these people at the Future of Life Institute who wrote this letter that said we should pause all these things for 6 months. And do you remember that, by the way?
I do, yeah.
And 30,000 people signed it. And if you look at those 30,000 people, they were amazing people, like luminaries, right and left, in the AI world. Many of whom I know, and I would never question their motives or anything. They sincerely believe that. And it would be reasonable to think, well, if those people are worried, I should be worried. Like, that would seem like a reasonable conclusion. But I don't think it is, because the letter is a letter, and it has what's known as a pull quote. That's where they take the one big idea and they bring it forward in boldface and they call it out. It's like the one thing. And it says, sophisticated AI systems should not be built until we are confident that their benefits, that they will be beneficial to society, and that the risks will be minimal. But just kind of a plain statement. And the thing about the statement, though, is there's not a technology in history that could have passed that test, ever. Before you make the technology, could you have known that Gutenberg's movable type would be beneficial to society and wouldn't have risk? Well, it probably brought about, the Protestant Reformation and all these wars. I don't even know if it's true about the internet, if the internet net is going to be positive and that it's risks. So that's why it's an irrational statement to say it that way, to say we shouldn't build it unless we are confident it's going to be good and there's not going to be any downside. That is a statement that comes from a place of fear, not because, and I even liken it to that, which is long ago when, we were little furry mammals or whatever, and, we're playing on a foggy morning, and there's a shape off in the distance, and everybody's looking at it. And some people say it's a bear, run. And other people say, it's just a rock. It's just a rock that looks like a bear. Well, all the ones who think it's a bear run away, and all the optimists hold their ground. And most of the time, it was just a rock. But every now and then it was a bear, and it was the optimists that got eaten. And they are the ones that got plucked out of the food chain. And we're all the descendants of the ones that look at the shape and say, it's a bear, run. And that's what it is. Every single thing like this, it comes out. We look at it and say, oh my gosh, it's a bear, run. I don't think there's any hope government can regulate it. I just don't. I think it changes so quickly. I've been in AI for 25 years. I never thought I would live to see this day. I would have put big money against it ever happening. And when it did, we were all calling each other being like, what just happened? And one of my friends said it best. He goes, all our lives we talk about exponential curves, and we just got hit by one. Like, We should have seen that it would happen, that it was a result of an exponential curve. And so I wouldn't even know how to regulate it. And I live in it, and I have patents in it. So the hope that government can try to keep up and do something, I think is not going to happen. And this idea that, we don't build data centers or something, it's just we need to do something, but the nuance of it is just so, I wouldn't even know how to do it. And so I have very little hope that the lawmakers can and could and make it pass and so forth.
Got it. Was that what you were looking for, Nick?
Yeah, I mean that was kind of my assumption, that the genie's out of the bottle. There's no containing it, right? So and clearly the laggards who make their way to governing bodies are they're not even in a position to make wise choices.
There's two kinds of AI. One is something called narrow AI, which is when we teach a computer to do something like recognize spam. And then there's this thing called general intelligence, and that's an AI that you see in the movies, like Commander Data or C-3PO, and that doesn't exist. Nobody knows how to build that. When you hear these apocalyptic AI is going to kill us all, they're always talking about the one that doesn't exist. People worry about the other one, the one we know how to do. Well, they worry about job loss and things like that, but nobody thinks that's going to take over the world. But they're worried about this AGI. And ChatGPT looks like it because it represents itself as a being. It says, I haven't been trained on that. And it has a name, Claude, Alexa, and all of that. And so they look like that, but they're not. They're written in Python. That means they're just math. That means you could write them on a whiteboard. You could write that all on a whiteboard. And nothing on that whiteboard, nothing you write is going to come alive and take you. The people who believe in general intelligence believe in it not because they know how to make it. That's a universally agreed to statement. They believe in it because they believe fundamentally that people are machines. And if people are machines and technology is doubling, then someday we'll build a mechanical person. And then they'll be twice as good, twice as good, twice as good, twice as good. But if you don't think people are machines, then no machine will ever be able to do what people do. And that's the dividing. I wrote a philosophy book about AI. I'm not supposed to say that because it does not supercharge sales. But it boils down to that question of what are people? And I think I have good reasons to believe we are not. I think scientific reasons that can argue that.
And speaking of Byron's books, I did drop links into a couple of those in the chat, so you can go click on those and go purchase them. Next question from Scott McClanahan from Simple POS. Scott, meet Byron.
Hey, Byron, how you doing?
Hey, Scott.
Hey, so question for you. So we are an interesting position. We're trying to adapt AI, as a company and whatnot. But one thing that we found is that we have a lot of young employees, and they continue to, to piddle and fiddle with AI, and that's a good thing in theory. How do you recommend, and what would you recommend around trying to control or at least point them in the right direction so that they're not putting our data, our customers' data, and even kind of going off the deep end? One of the things that we've seen multiple times with just some preliminary testing is, you have a technician that's using AI for, say, support, and it gives them the wrong information, but they're too green to understand that that's the wrong information. And it's not only wrong, it's sending them in a completely different direction. What do you recommend as as an emerging technology, and that kind of goes with anything, but specifically AI, to help your team navigate that and keep them on track?
A fantastic question. And as much as I talk about the big bang and all of that, I used to go around and help companies do just that. So I'm a practitioner above all. And there's a direct answer to that. The first thing you should do is spot things that AI can do. And that is, you look at your organization, and they will be one of three things. The first is any task that two different people would do identically. So data entry, you would expect two people to do data entry the same, but you wouldn't expect two people to write the same novel if they're separated. So tasks that two people would do the same. The next is any task that a person does on a day-to-day basis and it doesn't change. And that would be something like a toll booth operator or something. There's a range of things in that task. And the third one are cognitive tasks that take 2 seconds or less. If a trained person has to look at something and think about it for 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, we probably can't do it yet. So you do your assessment of the different operations at your company. Now, you remember when I was talking about that biologist, the geneticist, all the way down the line to that order taker? It's actually a really good way to think of your own career individually, because I guarantee you, all of us, we have things we do down here that are the equivalent of being order takers at fast food place. Little tiny things you do every day is like, oh, this is a waste of my time. And then what you want to try to do is use technology to automate one tiny little thing in your day, some template in email so you don't have to retype the same one, or little things. And every time you do that, you learn one little new fact or something. You read a Wikipedia entry on something you didn't know. And that's actually all you have to do to stay on top of it all. It isn't some big retraining or rethinking or anything like that. Just every day, try to find some little thing you can apply technology to and use that 3 or 4 minutes to learn something. Now, your company is going to be the same way. I guarantee, there are processes that you do that satisfy those. The day-to-day, they're the same, 2 people do them the same, and they're simple cognitive things. And so you identify those. And then what you want to do is what's known as a proof of value, not a proof of concept. There are no concepts to prove here. The technology works. What you want to find out is, if I apply AI to this, is that meaningful? Like, do I want to do that? What do I save? And before anybody writes any code, people do it. So a person pretending to be a computer looks at the process and tries to figure it out. And if a person acting like a computer can do it, this is like back of the envelope. But before you jump into it, you prove to yourself it's worth doing, and you do that by trying to do it the way a machine would do it. And that's how you do it. Your early projects will always be somebody else's code and somebody else's data. Then it'll be somebody else's code and your data. And then if you're a big organization, someday it'll be your code and your data. So that's what I would say. Now, to a lot of people, AI means LLMs, ChatGPT and all of that. But they're no different, really, than any of the other ones. You still apply the same exact test to them.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Scott. Next, David Hale from PaySafe. And David's the last person to have his hand up. So if folks want to line up, because we've only got about 5-10 minutes at the most left. David, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Byron, thank you for the talk. It's been interesting. I guess my question is directly related to the LLMs. How do you see the copyright strikes and lawsuits affecting their development, and when do you think we'll get to the point that they stop hallucinating as often as they are, or to a minimum amount?
Well, with the first question, I don't think it's going to change. These companies have figured out it's easier to just take everything and use it to train their model, and then let the courts sort it out with penalties and fines after the fact. Because the amounts of these awards are trivial. They're cost of doing business to those companies. And it's a real challenge. And I can say that as an author, right? Like, my books are used to challenge it, to train it. And I didn't have a say in that. And I can't opt out of that. But it's very complicated. And there are hundreds of these companies, and they all need it. And, books are a good case because they're curated. They usually have a higher quality than like a Reddit post and so forth. So I think they're going to do it. When they will stop hallucinating is a contentious point. I have a friend who would know such thing, as a man named Stephen Wolfram, a brilliant man, who says these kinds of advances come in steps. And, we got OCR comes along and it isn't good for a long time, then it works. And voice recognition, then it works. But after they work, they don't actually get a lot better. And so we may have hit a plateau. Like there was a big breakthrough. Sam Altman comes along and says, I'm just going to throw all the money, all the compute, all the data at it. And they may not get incrementally better. They need to get where they use a lot less energy, and they need to get, because every time you do a query to an LLM, every time you ask it something, it's as if, let's say you just want to know how to change a bicycle tire. You're asking a machine that knows everything about everything and how to build rockets and how to, that giant apparatus. You're engaging that, turning that machine on to answer, how do I change my coffee filter? And we're going to end up breaking them all up into much smaller things, and those will individually. And so there's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff that makes them faster and more efficient, but I don't know that they're going to get markedly better. And also, you may have noticed that nuclear power is all of a sudden all the rage. And it's because these hyperscalers are building these facilities. So Meta's building one the size of Manhattan that will use 5 gigawatts of power. So that's the output of 5 nuclear power plants, just to pump one data center. And they can't plug that into the grid. If they plugged it into a grid, your electricity rates would go up to $1 a kilowatt hour. I mean, there just isn't enough electricity to run them. And so they have to generate their own power. And that's their solution, is they're going to start doing that. So they're going to be building these things and building their own power for them. And maybe that'll be some breakthrough that makes them markedly better, but all of that's years and years away.
Cool. Thank you.
I speak of all of that. I would put that down in my opinion category. I'm not trying to be authoritative about that. That's just my informed opinion.
Yeah. No. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Anybody with one last question for Byron, or do you want me to go with my final question? Going once, going twice? So Byron, in the 5 minutes that we have left, so I'm curious, because you're both an entrepreneur and a futurist. We have a bunch of folks on this call who are entrepreneurs but do not make the claim to being futurists. So what advice would you give us for guiding, these the next 12 to 18 months to take advantage of everything that's around the corner that we might not be able to see? Well, what concrete action should folks take?
Futurists, by the way, are not necessarily prognosticators. They are really historians, people who try to understand why things happen one way and not another way. And that's why most everything I talk about comes from historical examples. And so I'm not really a predictor in that sense. Okay. But I would reiterate what I said earlier, that you don't have to reinvent yourself to use this technology. When I went to high school in 1987, that's when I graduated high school. If I went back in time, there's only one class I could have taken that would be useful to me today. And that was, who would have guessed it, typing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't take it. And so everything else I learned in school did. So then you say, none of us, almost none of us learned what we do on a day-to-day basis in school. We learned it a little bit at a time, because you get some new concept you hear about, and you go to the Wikipedia entry, and you read it, and you click on a link, and another link, and another link, and it's 3 a.m. So we teach ourselves all these new things, and that's how we think about it. How did you learn marketing or sales or any of it? They didn't learn it in school. And so that's what we do. We teach ourselves things a little bit at a time. And C.S. Lewis said something like, when you look from day to day, it seems like nothing changes. But if you look back 5 years, it seems like everything's changed. And that's what it's going to feel like. From day to day, don't go freaking out and doing some big, I need to learn to code. Just do what I was saying earlier. Find some tiny little thing to automate, save 3 minutes off your day, and learn some new thing in that 3 minutes. That's all it's going to take. You will never be left behind, because you're slowly but surely going up that hill that we've been doing for 300 years.
Very good. I'm a class of 1988, Bethel Christian School, and my coaches would say, get better every day. And that kind of sounds like what you're talking about. It's not some massive leap, but it's if you're getting better every day, that's how you're going to keep up, if I'm understanding correctly.
Correct. A little bit at a time. Don't freak out. Don't give in to fear.
Appreciate that. And I did take typing class on an actual typewriter back in the day.
I see
so.
you've got them behind you.
Yes, I do. Yes, I still have a few vintage ones for folks who are watching on video. So, well, Byron, thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise. And again, so glad that you spoke at the ScanSource conference, that we can connect with you. And again, folks, Byron's links to his books and to his website are in the chat. So feel free to engage with him that way as well.